right, my first ever triathlon story. Do I really have to tell this one? All right. So it all started because I ran a marathon. It wasn't entirely my idea. Actually, it was a colleague that wanted to run a marathon, and I foolishly said, "Sure, I'll run one with you." And it was kind of tough. I did run the full marathon. That's an entirely different story. But what I realized was that my body was aching. You know, my knees, my back, my hips. I probably didn't train properly and probably didn't have enough training before I ran it. But long story short, I just decided that I wanted a new challenge, but definitely not a marathon again. So I thought about it, and I thought a triathlon was a quite good idea because running was not a problem for me, but then it would push me into sports like cycling and swimming, which were really healthy in my opinion, and would kind of balance out the whole running thing and kind of give me different group of muscles and different movements to do, which I thought was just much healthier. So next summer, I really quite spontaneously decided I wanted to do that triathlon. That gave me about 3 to 4 weeks of training. And although I didn't really need to train so much for running, at least I knew I could do the distance because I was going to do the Olympic triathlon. So it's 1.5 kilometers swimming, 40 kilometers cycling, and 10 kilometers running. 10 kilometers running, it's 1/4 of a full marathon, and it's normally the distance I would do every day in the morning, so that wasn't a big deal. However, a big however, I hadn't been cycling ever. I'm just not a cycler. And swimming, I think I had been swimming 10 years before that. I mean, I of course here and there, like a few strokes just when you're in a pool or something, but I didn't swim properly for like 10 years. So I didn't have also any material, like proper triathlete material, and because I do like to have a more minimalist approach to buying stuff, I decided that I wouldn't invest a penny or almost not a penny if I didn't know yet if I was gonna like triathlons. So I went for training my bicycle or my cycling in the gym, and also with these, public bicycles that you can find in the city. I was living in Frankfurt in Germany back then. And so, yeah, that's the way I was training. Definitely not like a proper triathlete, but, whatever works. And then for the swimming, I guess I just, I'm a bit ashamed to say that I just took out my one-piece bathing suit from when I was 16 or 17, the last time that I was swimming properly at high school. And that was my material, that was it, right? So here we go. How did I train? I actually only trained, I didn't have a proper plan or anything, so the only thing I did is I tried to just get in some distance in every discipline. So running, I wasn't too worried about that, but normally I would just go out in the morning and have my run as usual. And then for the cycling and the swimming, I would just go to the gym after work and try to do half an hour each, or maybe a little more, and see how it goes. And on the weekends, I would try to do at least one day where I would try to do all 3 disciplines. Most of the time I couldn't do them all together right after each other because, logistics. But it was actually super nice because I started motivating my friends to kind of either swim or run or cycle with me. And this, I have to say, was much more successful than my attempt to having friends run with me when I was training for the marathon, because who wants to run for 3 or 4 hours on a Sunday, right? Well, anyway, so triathlon training was a quite fun part. It really pushed me to go outside and enjoy the summer more and feel better in my body. I also must say that in 3 or 4 weeks I became really fit, and this was not something that I experienced when I trained for the marathon, because when I did that, I think my body was so much under stress and I kind of lacked sleep, and I was eating a lot of pasta, so this wasn't helping. So basically Marathon, I definitely put on fat, and triathlon, I definitely lost fat and built on some muscle. So I was pretty happy about that. I was going to do the triathlon not in Frankfurt, but somewhere in Austria, close to where my family was living. So my grandparents decided that this could be a fun get-together and go out, so they accompanied me to the triathlon on a Sunday really early morning. Also, I didn't have a bicycle. I didn't have a bicycle at all. So they said, or my grandma to be precise, said, "That's not a problem, honey. I have friends. I've asked them. They're really close to where the triathlon's gonna happen. And they told me they have a few bicycles you can pick from, and they're all really good." All right, what a beautiful opportunity. So I went there on the Saturday before the triathlon and had no plan B, of course. That's just me. And I arrived and oh yeah, they had bicycles. They had like 4 or 5 of them. But those were not triathlon bicycles, of course. I wasn't expecting that, but they were more like city bikes, and I ended up picking one that was fitting my size and kind of comfortable, but was a proper city bike, a lady city bike with a basket. Yes, I did this. So I picked my bicycle, was pretty proud of it, and I thought, like, what's the big deal? It's gonna be an Olympic triathlon. Of course, there's gonna be people just like me who have no clue and no proper material. I'm not gonna be the only one. Everything's fine. So the next day we go to the triathlon place and it's pouring rain. It's like 8 degrees Celsius, which is fairly cold for the summer. And we arrived there around 7 a.m. and all of a sudden I start freaking out, really, because all the people were super prepared. They had these perfect lightweight bicycles. They had neoprene suits, which I didn't have at all, of course, and all the perfect triathlon material. And I was starting to look in the crowd. Is there anyone else crazy like me with a like silly bike and just a noble bathing suits? None, zero. I actually believe that probably the ones crazy enough like me to do that didn't go because it was pouring rain and quite cold. I like to believe this, but maybe it's just that nobody would do that. I don't know. So in the end, we got there and my grandma started getting nervous. She was like, "Ooh, maybe you should have been more prepared, better material." And I tried to stay calm and not let myself, it's just, what's the big deal? It's just swimming, it's biking and running. I can do it. Like it will take time, but I can do it, right? So I arrived and I had to put back my bicycle together because in order to put it in the car, of course, we took away the front wheel, we put it back on, and then my grandma was getting so nervous. She organized me a screw to kind of at least get rid of the basket, because we saw that there was this like really thin line from changing from swimming to getting to bicycle, and I was a bit afraid that my city bike basket would be in the way for anyone willing to go quicker than me, which obviously would happen, and so we took away that basket, which also is a little bit sad because it was my landmark, but whatever. And I took my bike proudly and went to the area where you leave all your stuff as a triathlete. And I was gonna put to pass it, and the guy at the entrance looks at me and looks at my bike, looks at me, looks at my bike, and goes like, "Really?" I'm like, "Really what?" And he goes like, "You're going to do the Olympic triathlon with that bike, like that city bike?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "All right." I mean, so I go in, I put my bicycle without my city basket on the spot, and I was really nervous. Everyone seemed to know exactly what they had to do, and there was this lady preparing, and I was bothering her every 2 seconds with my questions, like, so do we come back after the swim here? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, do we come back after bicycle here? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, and she was, I think she was a little bit pissed off because I had no clue what I was doing. In the meantime, they were kind of telling how, everything was organized, and I wasn't really paying attention because I was too worried about step 1, which was, what do I leave here or what don't I leave here for my first triathlon? But I understood that this was the last time I was going to be in this area before going to swim, so I took off my shoes. I was barefoot, of course, wasn't prepared for just walking around like that. I didn't think anything through really. And yeah, because I didn't have a neoprene suit, and I was a bit ashamed of having my my bottom seen by everyone because I only had a normal bathing suit. I decided that I would keep my jogging trousers on. No, that's not so great, I know that it's breaking, in the water, it makes you slower, but I decided that I was feeling a bit ashamed of being so naked in front of everyone with their suits, and most of the people were really ripped. I wasn't, and I also just thought, I'm gonna be super slow anyways, I'm not a good swimmer, so what difference does it make? So I went there with my jogging trousers on. I went to the spot where we're gonna start. My grandma was starting to get really nervous, so she asked me if she could maybe even offer me to buy or at least rent a neoprene suit, because she saw a spot over there where they had one, because she also was, feeling the awkwardness of the situation as I was. But I said, no, look, I'm not willing to give a penny out for this. I don't know if I'm ever gonna, do a triathlon again. I just want to try once. And I checked the water temperature, which is at 25 degrees Celsius. It's really warm, so no need for a neoprene suit. So here I was going with the women group. I think it was only 15 or 20 women. It was a really small group. And we were getting prepared, people were chit-chatting a little bit, and then we jumped into the water, which was honestly really warm. Outside it was pouring rain and quite cold, so that was a great feeling. And I was a bit like, I had no plan. I hadn't checked, what the course was, where I had to go. So quickly I asked another woman, and she was like, oh yeah, of course, so you have to swim over there, and then you have to come back, you get out of the lake again, and then in again, do that little bit, and then you're out and done with the swim. And I'm like, and she's like, but that's not a problem, just follow everyone else. And I'm like, well, okay, she's got a point. So here goes the signal, and everyone starts swimming, and I try to crawl. I try to do my best crawling, but I hadn't trained so well for that. So all that happened is basically very quickly, because of the excitement and the not knowing enough of the technique, I was swallowing a lot of water. So I just decided to get my head up, and when I did this and looked out the water, everyone else was so far in front of me, so far. And I was like, how can I follow them if they're so far? But okay, I said, keep calm. All you want to do is finish. So to finish, start. So I just decided that I would start by doing some breast swimming, some strokes, just easy peasy, breathe, get back some air into the lungs. So that's what I did at first. And then I decided to crawl again, which I was trying to do with much more patience and calm, and it was kind of working out. But the problem is, when I was training my swimming, and I hope a lot of people who want to train for triathlons will listen carefully, in the swimming pool, there was a line on the floor. So it was pretty easy to kind of, go straight and follow the path. Well, you don't have a line on the bottom of a lake. So you actually can't see anything. So I was, crawling for a little bit, and then I was putting my head out of the water, and I was checking, and I was totally wrong. I was going in the wrong direction, too much to the left, too much to the right, and every time I had to breast swim back to the path, actually, which was really annoying. And I think after a while I checked again, how far am I, and I noticed there was only one woman that I finally managed to kind of pass. And this woman was a pretty old lady, and I mean, really, so congratulations for doing a triathlon at that age. But the problem is, she seemed to be in quite a distress, and there was the boat of people paying attention that was just circling around her, and she was basically sounding and looking like this, like I was like, oh my God, this is the only person left, and otherwise it's me. I'm so terrible. I was the last. So I kept going anyways. And I was like, this is going to take the time it takes, but I will finish. And I just noticed all of a sudden, one foot touching me and an arm touching me. And I'm like, oh God, what's happening? Of course, because it was so slow, like the men's group had, started as well, and I was in the middle of it. So I just decided, all right, I'm not gonna fight this battle. I just, took even a little longer path because I just wanted to get out of the very direct path. So I think this also added on my time. It was really dramatic. In the end, I made it. I finally finished the swim with my jogging trousers on. And when I go out and I start running to go to to pick up my bicycle, I hear the guy says, oh, and there is still a woman coming out of the water. So obviously I was pretty back in the rows, and then he goes like, and she's wearing a swimming suit and jogging trousers. Whoa, this is quite unusual. I was like, what? For sure, this is me. So, all right, I went to pick up my bicycle, and everything was wet. My jogging trousers were wet, my bicycle, everything. It was raining anyway, so what's the big deal? And then I took the bicycle and started pushing it, through that lane. And when I ended up starting and putting myself on the bike, starting to cycle, a lot of people were cheering me and going like, woo, woo, what's this bicycle? Are you going to go to the coffee shop or what? And yeah, that's exactly what I was looking like, just going on my city bike without my basket and cycling. So I started the 40 kilometers bicycle, and I was hearing a very strange noise on my bicycle. And you have to remember, this is a old city bike that's without the basket. And I didn't train with it. I didn't know the bike, so I was a bit scared because it was raining, the road was slippery, and I was hearing that very strange noise. So I stopped once, I checked everything, I stopped again, checked again, and I didn't see anything, so I decided to just go with it and keep cycling. But I wasn't going too fast because, first of all, I'm not a fast bicycler, of course, but also I was a bit scared of what could happen on a slippery road with a bicycle that does kind of strange sounds. After a while, you know how you have I had 3 gears on this bicycle, on this city bike for the triathlon, and I was on the maximum one, so that I could push quite a lot and so that I could go further with a bike. And all of a sudden, it stopped working. So I ended up being with 2 gears, and I was on my maximum gear, and it looked like that. Because, what could I do? I had no power with this gear, so I was at maximum with my feet. And I remember that there were the photographs. The the photographers, you know, along the road, and like 2 of them that I saw, they were like, what's she doing? They were like, oh my god, what's this person? She seems to be in trouble. And you can imagine me on my city bike like this and pedaling like that, and then you would have all these triathletes like vroom, 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 one after the other, and I'd be like, all right. So I started singing and, you know, just trying to keep myself entertained until I think everyone, I think all the triathletes were in front of me. I think I was the last one, and for maybe in the middle of it, after 1.5 or 2 hours, I was still seeing someone in front of me. But after a while, he was gone. He was just much faster than I was. And since it was like a small triathlon in the countryside, at some point I was also like confused. I wasn't sure if I was still on track because there was no big or proper, you know, like signs. So sometimes the road would go like this and there wasn't any indication of where to go. So I kind of had to guess, and I was like, all right, this road looks a little bigger, so it's probably the main one, but really there was not such a big difference, so I wasn't too sure. And every once in a while, I would see maybe like maybe a cap on the road, or maybe some sunglasses, and I would be like, oh, that's probably the road because someone from the triathlon must have lost this and that. So. And luckily enough, also, every 5 kilometers, I could see, you know, kilometer 20, 25, 30. And when I saw kilometer 35, I was really happy because I was like, here we go, only 5 kilometers left. I'm almost there. And then I can run, and running, I know how to do it. So that's good. And yeah, what happened is that when I was at, like, I barely passed the kilometer 35, and all of a sudden I hear this big noise like and I'm like, what now? Well, you remember this strange noise that I couldn't really quite identify what it was, and I feel quite silly nowadays talking about that, but remember, I was zero cycler, I was never bicycling, so I had also no experience with bicycles. It turns out that when we put on the front wheel back on the bike, as we had to transport it, so we put it away and we put it back on the bicycle, we didn't place the brakes right. So it means that all the time I was doing my triathlon, the brake was breaking. On top of everything else, having lost my 3rd gear, and now also the brake was all the time against the wheel, kind of, you know, using the wheel, and then it just exploded and all the air of my front wheel got out. Everything. No air left. So I checked the damage and I was like, what now? Because 5 kilometers with a bicycle, that's okay. But 5 kilometers by feet, pushing your bicycle, it's an hour. So I decided that I was gonna keep going on this broken bicycle. So I did the last 5 kilometers with this wheel without air in the front of my bicycle. Yep, I did that. Finally, with 2 or 3 doubts again when it came to the road, but I finally made it to the bicycle finish line. And I remember that there were a couple of people leaving the triathlon already, some people who had watched the triathlon, and they went like, hey girl, what are you doing? Like, I'm like, well, I'm in the triathlon, I'm gonna run now. And he's like, well, everyone long started, hurry. And I was like, oh my God, you guys, you don't even know what I've been doing until now. And so I decided to go from the bicycle finish line. I put my bicycle back to the place where it was supposed to be, and then I was like, now I can run. Finally, I can do something I'm good at. And so I started going to what I thought was the starting line when for the running. But I went there and it seemed to be closed. A lot of people in front cheering the people, and there was no entrance basically from my area to there. So I thought, all right, maybe I'm mistaken, maybe it's somewhere else. So I start running around trying to find the start line for the running. And I can't seem to find it. So in the end, I ended up going to the tent, asking people in the tent, and the people were like, sorry, we don't really know, you have to ask someone else. So I basically went from one place to another, trying to figure out where the start line for the running was. And the thing is, I finally found some of the organizers, and he said, look, I don't know, but the photographer has been taking pictures, so he must know where the start line is. So I'm like, all right. So I didn't think much, I just ran straight to the photographer, and by doing so I didn't realize that I crossed the finish line because it was of course positioned in a way now to take pictures of people finishing the triathlon. So all of a sudden I hear my name, and Anya just finished the triathlon with a time of blah blah blah, and I was like, whoa, that's a pretty good time, and probably just because I haven't even started running yet. Anyways, he tells me where the start line is, and the start line was the one I initially thought it was, but the thing is, you had to run 4 times the same lap. So that's why they had closed it, because they thought everyone had started with the running already, and now it was all about just running in circles for 4 times to get your 10Ks. So yeah, so I wanted to go there, and when running there, I met my grandpa. And he said, Anya, so are you done? And I'm like, no, I haven't done the running yet. And he's like, Anya, it's over. People have started a long time ago. Just leave it. We'll just go and grab some nice food and some beer, and let's just enjoy the rest of the day. And I'm like, no. I'm like, no. I've done the most difficult part. I've had such a hard time, and now it's just running. Running I can do. Running I will do. So I said, there's no way you're gonna stop me now. I'm gonna finish this. So I went there and I started running, and on, like there were always like some jury positioned there to make sure that people don't cheat and to kind of check on people, also for health and everything. And the first one I passed, the guy goes like, oh, I haven't seen you running yet. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's because it's my first round. And he's like, oh, he's like, you're gonna run it? Are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I will do it. And so I keep running, and then I come to the second jury on the road, and the guy looks at me, and he was on his bicycle, and he starts, cycle next to me, and he goes like, hey, I've looked you from afar. Your running technique is pretty good. So what happened? Why are you last? And I said, oh my God, this is a long story. And he's like, well, if you're not too bothered, I have time now. Like, most people are finished. I could just accompany you and you tell me your story. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I think I finished my 10 kilometers running with one of the jury cycling on my side, and we were just chatting about this story and about triathlons and all of this and marathons. And we were passing every time in the center of a village next by, and there was like this little group of hardcore audience that became my fans, because they saw that I was like really the last and I was gonna do it. And so they really cheered me until the end. Some of them even came to the finish line to cheer me as the very last triathlete. It was really funny, because in the end, like, you had a lot of people finishing the triathlon a little bit before me, and so I was still running my laps with some other people running, and they were all super unfit. It was the people like who had really trouble finishing the triathlon, and when running, I was in my element, so I looked so fit. And also, honestly, I couldn't go so fast anyways with the bicycling, so I just didn't waste all my energy yet, so I was good running, you know. And yeah, that's it. A pretty long story, but this is how I did my first ever triathlon. And I must say that I really, really loved the experience. It was so funny, and also the interaction with the people, their reactions, because I was so silly. And I love this experience to this day. I would want to do triathlons again. I've had a few ones since then, but never with intense training or something, not as much as you should, at least. And I would say I'd highly encourage you to have a triathlon experience as well. If you've had one, please, 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 you know, comment. Let me know how your triathlon story has gone. I'd be delighted to know whether it was as funny as mine or even funnier. And of course, subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe to have more stories, funny stories, but also like you know, tactical knowledge about changing habits. That's what I want to focus on in this channel. I hope to be able to help you, and I will see you on the next one. All right, my first ever triathlon story. Do I really have to tell this one? It's kind of, yeah, not to my advantage, I guess, but all right.